Hello everyone, how are you doing? Today this video is about Sikorsky to lay off nearly 800 salary workers. QA expert Daryl Guberman explains why. Well, the first thing that comes to mind as someone who's been involved with aerospace is why? What happened here? Well, the simple fact is Lockheed Sikorsky / Boeing lost the contract to Bell Helicopter. So in order to show the representatives in Connecticut that this has impacted the operations, they do this as a ploy. Absolutely. So they'll tell you other things. Oh, we have a downturn in business, which they did. They lost the contract. But I can almost guarantee in April, the government accounting office who's judging the contract, even though that Bell won fair and square, they're going to judge the contract for Lockheed Martin. It happened in 2005 when Lockheed Martin took the VH-1, which is the presidential helicopter that Sikorsky had been building for over 40 years, back. Well, actually, they took it away from Sikorsky. They thought about it after, I guess, a little bit of pressure from the Connecticut contingency at the time. And they said, well, we'll give it back to Sikorsky, United Technologies at the time. They figured that in 10 years, 2015, they were going to purchase Sikorsky from United Technologies. So they figured, if not now, then when? And 10 years later was when. So we have some special guests here that came in today off the golf course and out of the martini parties and the cigar parties. We have Mr. Scott Donnelly, CEO of Textron. He's here in the wings. Also, we have Mitch Snyder, the CEO of Bell Helicopter. Coming as well is Mr. Jim Tassett, who was here at the Sikorsky plant a month or so ago, congratulating Sikorsky for the 5,000th helicopter that was delivered. And here's Jim Tassett, the CEO of Lockheed. You have Mr. Paul Alemo, president of Sikorsky Aircraft. He's here as well. And let me go into a little bit of detail. And unbelievable. Let's go back in time. I know 800 people have lost their jobs or are going to lose their jobs. And it's a sad state of affairs that it started in the 1980s when corporate America, when I had my first business course, BU 101, it said in order for anybody within the upper management to get a performance bonus, i.e. like a CEO, you must make a profit first. Well, back in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, they found out, well, hey, if I can offshore 5,000 jobs out of America and put them into Asia, put them into China, all the rest of this mess, then I'm going to get a bonus. So the CEO at the top of these corporations, no matter who they are, president, CEO, whether they succeed or fail, they're going to get a bonus. And that's a shame. These 800 salary workers behind closed doors, the board of directors and the CEO and what have you, they say those are very nice cost-cutting initiatives. That's the big buzzword. That was it in the 80s. It's in the 90s. But let's look this over. In 2005, as I said to you, that Lockheed took the presidential away from Sikorsky and then gave it back. In 2009, Lockheed Martin gets hacked by China, taking the F-35 fighter. Their cybersecurity, they'll tell you, oh, we're very robust. Remember what I said in many videos. When you hear robust, you hear transparency. Somebody's lying, and it's not a good system. Robust doesn't mean it's good anymore. If you had people of integrity and honesty who are doing this, then those words would have some sort of fabric behind it, some sort of chutzpah behind it. But most of these people do not. So what happened is Lockheed gets hacked in 2009. In 2013, Lockheed teams up with Bell Helicopter on the V-280 Valor. So Lockheed knows what Bell is building there. And a lot of the managers who I've looked into, who sit on Bell's board, had Lockheed employment. Mitch Snyder, Lockheed, the president who I just showed you, has a Lockheed employment. So whether they win or they lose, those guys at the top are still going to make out, my fellow citizens. They're going to make out. In fact, from what I've read and what I've looked into is that Lockheed Martin, their avionics division, is assisting with the avionics in the V-280 Valor. So it's a win-win situation, even though they're laying off 800 people out of their rotary side of the business at Lockheed Sikorsky. So Lockheed was working with Bell in 2013. In fact, we have a little placard here if you want to see it. Here it is. The problem is that they have cybersecurity issues at Lockheed. Most recently, they had an exposition in China at one of the military contractors. They have different military hardware and equipment. It was an exposition, and they had aircraft that looked just like the Defiant SB-1 and also the Bell V-280 Valor sitting on display in China. So these technologies have been taken. We move up. Bell and Lockheed split their ways from 2013, but we go back 1 year. In 2012, a division of United Technologies, Sikorsky Aircraft, gets hacked by China, taking the UH-60 Black Hawk and T-700 engine and other items as well. In 2015, what happens is, in the Connecticut Mirror, this is what was there. With China's okay, Lockheed Martin to close on Sikorsky Aircraft. Why not? China is an international regulator. That means this. Since they're an international regulator, they can vote. That was the last vote they needed approval. And why not? China hacked Lockheed, technology gone. China hacks Sikorsky, technology gone. So they gave a thumbs up. The worst thing is our Connecticut contingency, Rosa DeLauro, Jim Himes, Chris Murphy, and Richard Blumenthal all gave Lockheed a thumbs up for working with China. Isn't that a tender moment in a turbulent world? People have asked me time and time again, he said, Daryl, how do you know that they got their technology hacked? How do you know this? Well, we did the assessment, and here you go. You have the F-35 made by Lockheed and the J-31, which is almost identical to the F-35. You have the UH-60A Black Hawk, and here it is, the Z-20 China. So yes, without a doubt, it has been definitive. These aircraft have been taken. Yes, it is definitive. The Chinese already have this technology taken from us or given to them. It's probably more like given to them. You know, we have also here Mr. David Calhoun, who is assisting Lockheed Sikorsky with the Defiant SB-1. And as you can see, this is what he does. He's walking across the golf course while he has tragedy happening. Isn't that amazing? There has been many problems with Lockheed. In fact, most recently, they had a article that came out of 800 aircraft that had been produced for our armed services. The 801, there's still quality issues, causing either loss of aircraft with pilot. They've had problems with the engines as well. In fact, this is one of the blurbs that was out in a governmental audit, and it said the F-35 program, and this also goes for the engines of Pratt & Whitney. The F-35 program did not sufficiently implement or flow down technical and quality management system requirements to prevent the fielding of non-conforming hardware and software. This could adversely affect aircraft performance, reliability, maintainability, and ultimately program cost. Lockheed Martin Company and its subcontractors did not follow disciplined AS9100 management system practices. The only problem is that you have the Department of Defense who writes these reports. You have the Department of Defense, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, the FAA, the FTC. They're all sitting on the American National Standards of Institute Board. American National Standards Institute Board. That's who they're sitting by. Being protected by the FBI, who will do the investigations when you have a failure. Boeing sits on ANSI's board. They're all congregating together. You have Boeing, who's fudged documentation on their aircraft with their metals. They're probably still flying around up there. Maybe they decided where it isn't too critical. If it cracks or something, they'll fix it during maintenance. But it's still flying around. I haven't heard or read anything where there was a fix from the documentation that they fudged. All of this will be in the videos down below in the description. But you know, Boeing, Lockheed, they've all gotten hacked. Raytheon, they've gotten hacked. But what I want to do is I want to read this poem by Edward Guest. And I think it is very fitting for the CEOs at these organizations that I just mentioned and introduced. And this is called Good Enough. And this is by Edward Guest. My son, beware of good enough. It isn't made of sterling stuff. It's something any man can do. It marks the many from the few. It has not merit to the eye. It's something any man can buy. Its name is but a sham and bluff, for it is never good enough. With good enough, the shirkers stop in every factory and shop. With good enough, the failures rest and lose to men who give their best. With good enough, the car breaks down and men fall short of high renown. My son, remember and be wise. In good enough, disaster lies. With good enough, have ships been wrecked, the forward march of armies checked, great buildings burned and fortunes lost, nor can the world compute the cost. In life and money it has paid, because at good enough men stayed. Who stops at good enough shall find success has left him far behind. There is no good enough that's short of what you can do and ought. The floor which may escape the eye and temporarily get by shall weaken under the strain and wreck the ship or car or train. For this is true of men and stuff. Only the best is good enough. I thank you. 203-556-1493 or Daryl, Daryl, TQRS at yahoo.com. And my heart goes out to those people who are getting laid off. I thank you. And that poem was by Edward Guest, and it's called Good Enough.